Hi, my name is Janie. Welcome to Pillows and Princesses, where I invite academics, nerds, friends to come hang out in my blanket fort for an awesome sleepover where we discuss everything nerdy pop culture. And today I have a beautiful friend of mine on. Her name is Coco Dunn. She's half goth academic, half vampire, and I'm really excited for you guys to meet her. If only there was a quicker way to get her here. I know. Oh, hi, Coco.
Oh, hi, Janie.
And Momo.
Oh,
You brought your
Momo.
assistant.
I did. She helps me with everything I do, especially my eyeliner in the
She's
mornings.
really
She's
good. But Coco, I've been thinking a lot about vampires. And since you're my vampire best friend, I thought you'd be the right person to talk to about this.
You know, I am so honored that you said that because I, for no particular reasons related to my nocturnal activities, I love talking about vampires.
I know you do. And I know your vampire qualifications, but for other people, what qualifies you to talk about vampires?
Oh, I am a student right now studying specifically the Gothic in literature, and I also spent the whole weekend watching every Twilight film. So I am really prepared to talk about this.
You're really locked and loaded. I would have never expected you to study the Gothic.
No, it's actually the most shocking thing about me.
It's really out of
When you look at
character.
me, you're like, that's an American transcendentalist.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Coco, I feel like the best place to start would be the beginning. Where do you think vampires come into popular media?
Ah, that is such a fantastic question. I think it's so hard to answer, but you have to start with the beginning, which is Dracula, right?
Okay.
When you talk about popular media, you
Mhm.
could get into Sheridan Le Fanu's lesbian vampire Carmilla, or you could start with Good Lady Decane, which is about a surgical vampire. But Dracula is really where you see vampires becoming this popular fad that people are really entranced by this idea of vampires.
I mean, Dracula is like the vampire.
It's so true. And I think it really resonated with Victorians in this major way because all of a sudden there's this vampire oligarch. He's very suave. He's taking away young women and turning them into crazy vampire fiends. It's very dramatic.
Where can I find a man like that?
On the street.
On the street. A Victorian.
Yeah, time travel. Go back in time and go like wander
Just
around some
look
ruined
for him.
castles. Yeah.
Okay, and from there, would you say that vampires remained popular or did they kind of wane in popularity?
Another fantastic question. I think vampires sort of fell out of focus in a big way because
Okay.
Dracula's sort of this one-hit wonder moment that people aren't
Mm.
focused on as much. I think they kind of remain out of the cultural consciousness until F.W. Murnau's 1923 Nosferatu, when all of a sudden people are thinking about it again. People are really bringing back that Dracula vibe. If you didn't know, Nosferatu was actually an unlicensed Dracula adaptation because
Fan fiction?
Yes, exactly that.
Okay.
What if Dracula was German? What if he was?
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we go from Dracula and then like this dead period and then Nosferatu.
Yes.
And then would you say that's like the spark that really ignites vampire mania?
Yes, because then you get 1931's Bela Lugosi as Dracula, who, if you've seen Sesame Street, he's just like the Count, that's where you get that
Oh.
stereotypical big Hungarian accent where he wants to suck your blood and things like that,
Okay.
right? That the Dracula stans, the Dracula girlies are like,
Okay.
we have to get a handle on this. We have to get a handle on Nosferatu fever, and we should make him hot. So then, you get Bela Lugosi in the picture in these Universal Monsters films, and he's huge. Everyone's loving Bela. They're like, I want to see him everywhere. I want to see his face plastered all over.
Okay, so the vision of like a tall, dark, and handsome, slicked back, like big, billowing cloak, like that's not starting with Dracula.
No, that's starting with Bela Lugosi as Dracula. Dracula
Okay.
in the novel is an old, decrepit, ugly man for most of it.
Oh,
And he scales the walls like a lizard.
I had no idea.
I know. I am sad that we lost that part of vampire media.
They should be crawling on walls.
Yes, I need to see Edward Cullen. Like,
Well, he does do it in the movie, like jumping through the trees.
that's
But
so true. But not in like a weird freakazoidal way.
Yeah, not Lizadular.
Lizadular,
Not
yes.
Lizadular way. But that's a good point to bring up, is that like now the modern day vampire, you're thinking of like this like mature but youthful looking guy who's just gorgeous and like intoxicating and magical in like the Edward Cullen. So how do we get from A to B, basically?
I really think it's the way we view Edward Cullen now is largely due to Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles. We have to give her flowers. That you kind of get in like the 60s and 70s, this sympathetic vampire with Barnabas Collins in the TV series Dark Shadows. And Anne Rice sees that and she's like, what if they were homoerotic? What if they were
Check.
flamboyant?
Check.
And so then you get these sort of like brooding, sensual vampires that everyone's nuts for. Everyone loves this Lestat, Louis, immortal lover vibe. And I
Okay.
think it's very Stephanie Meyer that she saw that and she's like, what if it was for me?
Just for me, as
Just
a little
for
treat.
me, as a little treat.
Okay, so looking at it, vampires have obviously evolved greatly over time. Would you say that there's like one characteristic that you feel like has pulled through, aside from like sucking blood and being immortal and whatever?
Very true. I feel like the big thing with vampires is they're really connected to this like idea of loss of innocence, that like whether that's through Twilight and she's like all of a sudden has this dark brooding boyfriend, or whether it's through like Dracula going through England and turning all the young unmarried women into evil vampire wenches. You get this idea of like he takes something from his victims, that he's someone who steals.
Okay.
What I think, not to get too theory heavy, but
Get into it.
I think a lot of what was happening in Dracula, part of why it was so resonant, is you have all these anxieties about the oligarchy and the nobility versus this new labor class that you're getting because of the Industrial Revolution. And all of these heroes in Dracula are like Mina's a secretary, right? She's memorizing railroad schedules because she wants to be a great secretary. She's doing all these shorthand things because she's a secretary. And Jonathan is like, I'm a lawyer. And then you get the oligarch vampire who comes in and sucks blood, and he takes from this working class and turns them into leeches like him. I think it's very wrapped up in this like class debate.
So you're saying vampires are just capitalists?
Yeah.
Oh, I can see that.
I know, suck your blood and energy until you have nothing
You're
to
gone.
live. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, which is why I think Twilight is such a fascinating piece of vampire media, because you lose all of that. That he's just rich and that's awesome. And we love that.
Oh, so there's no like real dynamic there of like she's remorseful about it. Like she's just jazzed.
Yes, and there's no like when she turns into a vampire at the end. I'm sorry, spoilers if you haven't seen all of Twilight yet.
Yeah, can someone flash Twilight spoilers and like a big air horn?
When she's transformed, she's like, and I was always meant to be this way, and this is great, and I love this. I think that's very like the way that we view wealth nowadays is so wrapped up in like, that's gonna be me. I'm gonna be that one day.
No. That's so true.
I know.
And he's like, oh, well, it's not all it's cracked up to be. You're just beautiful and perfect and young and rich forever.
Yes.
And you don't want that, though.
I want to keep you poor and weak forever. You know, he's this debate about like, oh, should he turn her? Can he turn her? Is that allowed? Is so, I don't know. I don't think Stephanie Meyer was thinking about this deeply, but I think it's very indicative of like this cultural desire to be rich and wealthy and powerful. And
Yeah, because I mean, fundamentally, Bella is like a regular small town girl at the beginning. Like, she's got divorced parents, her dad's a cop, she's eating at the diner, and then at the end, she's like going to Italy and like driving around in like Ferraris, and she's part of this like secretive upper class, but she's still like living this luxurious, perfect life.
yes, that it's so like they do all these fantastic things. Did you know in the Twilight films, the Cullens never drive the same car 2 times? I was paying attention. There's a different car every time.
Every time.
It's they got a Jeep. They've got a
for the
Lexus.
baseball scene?
Yes,
Yep.
they've got many things.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think Bella getting to participate in this lifestyle speaks to a lot of desires of young women nowadays, that they're not turned off by this idea of a man with more power and more wealth in them. It's this way to access this level of class that they previously hadn't had access to.
You're blowing my mind right now.
If I may blow it further, I also think, Stephanie Meyer is a gorgeous Mormon woman,
Mhm.
and a lot of Mormon theology is wrapped up in her approach to Twilight. And I read this fabulous essay. I cannot claim this idea. I will remember who wrote it one of these days.
It'll be in the bio.
It'll be in the bio. Where he posits that Edward's vampirism is similar to the Mormon priesthood. So if you didn't grow up Mormon, there's like this special power that Mormons can access that is their direct link to God, but only men in Mormon culture can have it. And the ways that women access this special godlike power is by getting married or accessing it through their father. And so he posits that Edward's vampire powers are very similar to this Mormon priesthood power.
Because he gives it to Bella, and the only way she can access it is through him.
Yes, exactly that.
That is crazy.
I think it's so wild to think about.
But that is an interesting thought of like how much the way you're raised, even on like a theological level, can affect your writing, probably subconsciously.
Yes, like I don't think she was thinking, she's like, this is my priesthood boy. But like he just ended up that way.
He just ended up that way.
Although I did want to pick your brain. Have you seen the memes about Carlisle Cullen resembling Mormon leader Joseph Smith?
I have.
Do you feel that's intentional, or do you feel that it just happened?
That he's like a beautiful, wise, blonde-haired, blue-eyed
Cravat, hates
Yes.
Catholics.
hates Catholics.
I mean, what are the Volturi if not Catholic?
We might have to cut this part for the Catholics at home. For the Catholics at home.
Sorry to the Catholics.
We,
at
the
home.
people of Pillows and Princesses, have no personal feelings about Mormons or Catholics or vampires. Or
well, I have personal
Hungarians.
feelings about vampires.
I have personal feelings about vampires, but no otherwise personal feelings.
Yes, purely theological, purely theoretical.
But purely looking at the mind's eye of each individual person and their personal experience and bias.
Exactly, because
Like Momo.
Do you have any thoughts on the matter, Momo?
Momo's part vampire, if you couldn't tell by her off-putting overall energy.
It's so true. I mean, when I first saw her, I asked, "Is she a dog?" And I think the answer is kind of. She's also
Mostly.
part vampire.
Part vampire. But we've talked a lot about Twilight vampires. And I feel like that has kind of seeped into the public zeitgeist of like, what is a vampire? Beautiful, young, wealthy, powerful, immortal, like
So sexy.
well connected, and so sexy.
He's gotta be.
So sexy. Where does sex appeal and vampires intersect?
Mesh?
I mean, I know. But from a scholarly standpoint, where do you think these two things start to intertwine?
Yes, I mean, I I love to blame Bela Lugosi for it because I, that's such a beautiful man. He's so gorgeous. And women in the 1930s were gagged. There was like Bela Lugosi fan clubs. They were like, we love him so much. We want him in every movie ever. But I think this sort of like tragic immortal boyfriend with this like heart of gold who only eats animals, or however else that we're starting to view them, like in like Vampire Diaries and other vampire immortal boyfriend spin-offs. I'm going to throw in a 3 term, and it's called post-feminism. And it's this idea that after third wave feminism, women are kind of playing with the ways that they want to experience femininity, and if they want certain privileges that came before third wave feminism or after. And this idea that you can have an immortal boyfriend is like, you have your cake and eat it too, right? You've got this like this man who opens doors for you and has this chivalric code because he's from 1907. But then he can also have all these modern values that he's like that because he cares about women so much, and he can have these sort of more contemporary ideas about who women are, what they should be doing, that it's like, you know, you get both things. You get to a permanent immortal protector and also an enlightened woke feminist.
Every word that tumbles forth from your lips is like changing my life right now.
You are so kind. I have to thank scholar Ananya Mukherjea, I think is how her name is pronounced. I'll link her in the description because she taught me everything I know about.
So many good damn vampire links in this bio right now.
You better be clinking them.
Clinking the link.
Clinking the link. Je suis désolée. Pardonnez-moi.
But on the note of vampires, I've noticed this thing in literature. Well, not to get too controversial, but if you can call it literature, in popular fiction right now. Sorry that my baby dog has a great interest in you and your heart.
I don't even mind. I have an interest in her and her heart.
But right now in popular fiction, we're seeing a lot of like morally gray boyfriend, dark, moody, grumpy, grungy. He's an assassin, but like he's so nice. Or, you know, like he hates everybody but our female lead. Do you think that that stems from the same seed as the vampire trend?
I think it absolutely does. I think Edward Cullen did a number on our cultural perceptions of masculinity, and
thank goodness.
And he's just everywhere. I also think, and I'm sorry to get too deep in the weeds, but similar to what we're talking about with vampires being sort of capitalists, I think there's this idea that it's hard for us to view love in a way that isn't related to possessing somebody, that we want to love in ways that like relate to ownership, because that's how we negotiate a lot of the things that mean a lot to us in the kind of economy that we live in. And so wanting to be loved like you are a beautiful product, like you are a piece of a skin cream that he cherishes with all his heart, and he has to defend you to the rest of his life because you're his property, is very wrapped up in that like morally gray man who's like, you're all mine and I'll never share you with anyone else.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know.
I can see that thread there of wanting to have kind of this guy who has it all. And you have to be part of it all, you know, like full ownership of himself. And then, you know, this vast wealth we've been discussing, but also like you as a person. I mean, to circle back to Edward, I hate to say it, but Edward, he's just an exemplar of vampire behavior. He like fully takes Bella. Like she can't be with her parents anymore. She can't be with her friends anymore. She can't even like go out during the day.
That girl can't do anything.
She can't do anything except like hang out with him and like have his weird CGI baby. Like that's not enough for a girl to do.
And unless we forget the weird CGI baby, Yes, that I think that it's also wrapped up in he demands it of her in order for her to access this cool vampire power that she wants so bad and to have immortal life. He's like, "Well, you have to marry me and join my family and you have to become part of this culture for me and leave your whole life behind
Yeah, like
or you can't have it."
you have to dissolve every essence of yourself that is not immediately intertwined with me.
Yes, and I think we see that with the terrible treatment of my poor Jacob.
Oh, Jacob, rise up. Did you know that Jacob is the name of one of, what is it, Stephanie Meyer's brothers?
Can you say psych right now?
No, that is the name of one of her brothers. And her mother-in-law, Victoria. Like the evil, horrible vampire woman.
Who's like, "I'm gonna kill you.
I'm gonna kill you," and is so mean to Bella for no reason.
That's so evil. And also, why would you make your own brother a baby marrier? Okay.
Yeah, first of all, why would you write your brother into your book and be like, he's gonna be kind of sexy? My sexy brother. My other option. My backup is gonna be my sexy brother. And then when things don't work out for me and my sexy brother, he can have my kid, I guess. Like, Stephanie, well, take the fingers off the keys.
If I could examine any human brain under a microscope, it would be hers. I just truly want to know what she has knocking around in there. Like, I'm sorry we spoke so much about Twilight, but it really is one of the most fascinating.
It really is something to dissect.
It's so true. I was thinking as I was watching Twilight for 12 hours that I was like, well, if Stephanie Meyer had been just a little bit more goth, this would be one of the most interesting pieces of cinema. Specifically, this like very monstrous, very horrific pregnancy that Bella goes through.
I know.
That it's like, it's killing her. It's eating her. She looks awful. And I think if Mary Shelley had had her hands on that, like, people would have been crying. People would have been peeing their pants. That's so scary.
Yeah. And now that you bring up Mary Shelley, I'm thinking, do you think that there is, when I think of vampire, like, what comes to mind is these male exemplary vampires. Why do you think it is that, like, female vampires to me seem kind of secondary? Like Alice, Rosemary, Esme from Twilight, Carmilla, Coco lovingly gifted me, and I read it and it was amazing, and I'm wondering why it wasn't such a smash hit as like Dracula. Why do you think that it is so linked to masculinity specifically?
I think that so much of it is because female vampires are sort of this affront to nature, right? That at the time when vampires are gaining this traction and popularity in the 19th century, there is this view of women as the angels of the house, right? That they are delicate and kind and perfect, and they don't do anything that is selfish or takes from other people. And so I think it's very wrapped up in this 19th century masculinity that women are perfect people who stay in their home and are just kind and gentle and lovely, and men have the capacity to leave their homes to feed on young women. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just, again, reeling in that.
You do get a lot of female vampires who are associated a little bit more with sexual promiscuity. You get the brides of Dracula, who are these very like sensual, temptress devils. And Carmilla, who is a lesbian vampire who leads this innocent young woman to her ultimate demise through her, evil feminine wiles. And I think that's another thing at play here too, that there's this inherent sensuality that vampires are associated with that same thing of this loss of innocence. Taking innocence is very wrapped up in that sort of language. And when women are practicing that, especially in a culture that values innocence and virginity in women so much, that can never be seen as heroic or good.
So it's sort of the dichotomy between like women really can't be perceived as evil or having the capacity for evil.
Yes, they truly can't. And they can't be seen as these people who act autonomously. That, like, is there a female vampire who's not attached to a man? And when there is, she's gay.
She's gay. Good for Carmilla.
Good
honestly.
for Carmilla. Did you get any, like, ideas from Carmilla or anything?
I don't know. I don't know where I would find a beautiful goth friend, and then I would be the like frou floral one. I just don't see that.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't know where I would even find that.
Hard to come by.
Hard to come by these days. But how do you think that vampirism has affected you in your life? What was your like relationship with vampires? We both, I don't know how this didn't come up sooner. We both have interacted with truly infamous Vampire Night, which if you at home are not familiar, Vampire Night spoilers, flashing the air horns. Vampire Night is a manga and an anime subsequently.
Truly horrid.
Truly horrid about a young woman who goes to a half vampire, half human school. And she has two boys that she fancies. She's in a love triangle with two vampires. And she finds out that one of her love interests is her brother. Is that right?
Here's the thing. Okay, she finds out that he's her brother, and she's like, I'm not cool with that. And he's like, no, it's okay, we're vampires. And she's like, okay. And then he's like, actually, I'm not just your brother. I'm actually your great grandfather. And she's like, crazy.
She's like, great. That's far enough away. That's like seventh cousins at that point. And she's like, well, girls gotta make a do.
Girls gotta make do.
And she's got this other guy.
Yes.
Not related.
Not related, except he's her adopted brother. So, like, she has got some things going on.
She really could use her brain ironed out a little bit.
It's so true. Maybe we should send this to Stephanie.
We need to send
This
an
might move
email
Stephanie.
to Stephanie.
If she hasn't already.
Who's to say Edward isn't Bella's great-great-great-grandfather? He could have been.
That's so true.
Someone
you never
pencil
know.
that down.
I know, except for, I'm so sorry, the Twilight girls are going to come for you because he was actually turned in 1907, and so he could not have been her great-great-great-grandfather. He would have had to be a couple generations before that.
Oh, I see. Well, thank you for correcting me before the Twilight girls came for my throat and for my neck.
They're vicious.
In the comments. But vampires, it's interesting how they've transcended cultures.
Yes, I think a lot of the way that we like think about vampires is this very European form that we're getting from obviously Bram Stoker's Dracula, obviously a little bit of Carmilla in there. But I think it's important to note that this is building on Hungarian and Romanian myths around vampirism. But so many cultures have their own version of vampires, you know? There's like the chupacabra who drinks goat blood, and there's a bunch of indigenous cultures who talk about bloodsuckers, which is where Stephanie Meyer got her questionable research
from.
About the cold ones in Quileute culture. Yeah, I think it's really interesting how much people are obsessed with this idea. But I think part of it is we hold our bodies to such an immense, like, sacred standard. And so the things that are horrifying to us are things being taken from our bodies. Can I go down another rabbit hole on you?
Yes. The way you phrased that was a little alarming. Cut that. No, leave it in.
Put that in there.
Leave it in for the shotties, but
going down another path, I think Victorians were so afraid of vampires because in this book Transfusion by Louise Kibbie, she talks about how Victorians viewed their souls, that their humors and their very personhood was embedded in their blood, and they're very afraid of that being taken from them. And then I think the version of that we have today, right? The She talks about how that's kind of evolved over time. It used to be brains. People were very afraid of their like brains being taken from them, whether that be zombies or like brain swapping, whatever. And she argues that the thing that we have today is we're really afraid of our organs being taken and sold. That there's this like pervasive cultural fear about your organs being taken from you and sold on the black market. And it's, you see it in like Squid Game and the Repo Man, that people are like nervous.
They're gonna come take my large intestine.
Yes. And I think what's interesting about that, as we're talking about, you know, the ways that our economies differ, is to the Victorians, it was like your soul is being taken from you. And it's very wrapped up in theology and spiritualism. And for us, I think our greatest fears are your body being abused for money without your consent. And I think that also speaks to some cultural evils that we think about when it comes to our bodies. We don't want to become things to be sold.
Yeah, that is fascinating that it kind of shifts from like a societal power, like an oligarch, like Dracula, right? Shifts from like this desire for this kind of man in this societal power that kind of comes from just like popular opinion. Now it's like they gotta be rich. It's all fiscal, right?
Yes. That it's like, in order to have the right to consume another body, like you just assume that vampires are wealthy.
Yes.
I saw this tweet the other day that was like, Count Dracula was not rich because he was a vampire. He was rich because he was a count. And I think that's extremely true. That like, I'm certain there are probably so many vampires out there who are in utter poverty, and people
Impoverished vampires, tap in. Leave a comment.
I so deeply want to make a Sarah McLachlan style. Like, today, there are 3 million vampires who are starving on the street. Donate today to starving street urchin vampires whose stories are not represented in the cultural zeitgeist.
For $1 a day, you can pay me and Coco to offer our little fingers to impoverished vampires on the streets of London and keep them fed for another day. Otherwise, where will Harry Styles go? What'll happen to him?
Who will feed him? And Cher? I mean, she's got enough, but...
Yeah. Who do you think, of celebrities right now, who do you think could be a vampire?
I mean, Cher is definitely on the list.
Cher.
I'm very afraid of Cher coming to eat me in the night.
Paul Rudd has had a long-lasting power.
I think Willem Dafoe, every time I think of Willem Dafoe, he's been the same age. Like, I know at one point he must have been younger, but when I think of him, I'm like, oh, he's always been the age that he is.
Yes. And on a similar note, I feel like, wait a minute, the man behind the camera, Tom Cruise, that's our vote.
That's our vote.
From the crew. Tom Cruise actually might be a vampire also.
That's a really good point.
That is a good point. Did I mention Paul Rudd?
You did mention Paul Rudd.
But
it bears repeating.
It bears repeating. David Lynch.
David Lynch, he's in the coffin right now. Someone go feed him. Okay, he's awaken him.
I just feel like in Twin Peaks, he was one age. And then through to Twin Peaks season 2, 25 years later, he was much the same.
That is so true. He's just, and right now he's alive and well and kicking and
he's
doing
fine.
Great. He's fine. And he's going to appear in your room tonight and he's like, listen, Janie, I'm going to suck your blood. or something similar.
Yep.
Along those lines.
He'd be like, fix your hearts or die. Offer up your blood now.
I think, okay, if you had the option to be a vampire, but you didn't get any of the cool wealthiness or the sexy boyfriend out of it, would you do it?
Would I be immortal?
Yeah.
No. Really? Yeah. That's a long time.
That's so fair. Here's one thing that I never understood about vampires, though, is this is going to be controversial. That I never understood their whining and moaning about this eternal life that never ends because, like, everything in the world can kill them. They're like, I'm immortal, and it's like, except for you could go suntanning, Edward Cullen. Like, the Volturi could kill you, or You could go get like a steak, just
You could go to Olive Garden
yes,
and get taken out by the garlic vinaigrette.
yes, you are very killable. So it's
Mhm.
like, if you're so worried about not wanting to live for 2,000 years, don't live for 2,000
Go
years.
live a little.
Go
A
live a
wussy.
little. Wussy? Okay, catch some rays. Go to the beach.
I know. Literally just ask for patio seating at an Italian restaurant and you will be dead within minutes.
You will be taken care of.
But to wrap it up, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think is the thing people need to know the most about vampires? And then I do have one last thought for you.
Ooh, okay. I think the thing that people need to know the most about vampires is I hope people are buckling up for a vampire renaissance. I'm really praying for a vampire renaissance of unsexy vampires.
A la
I-
Nosferatu.
A la Nosferatu, exactly that. That I think we're ready to have this discussion where vampires are like representing economic evils, and so I want them to look filthy and gross and disgusting and evil. I hope everyone is buckled up for the hideous vampire this coming season.
I agree. On the thought of like handsome, beautiful, mopey, eternal youth vampires, do you live in a fear of a world where we get a Timothée Chalamet vampire movie?
Every day I fear. Okay.
We do not want Timmy the vampire.
He will not be a good Dracula. He will not be great for that.
They let him be Wonka. Where do they draw the line?
Where do they draw the line?
He's gonna be Dracula.
Get that white boy home. Get him
Someone
hence.
take him home.
Okay. Although, if you're taking my recommendations, whoever's making the Timothée Chalamet vampire movie, stop and think about a Dracula movie starring Billy Burke, Bella's dad from Twilight, as Van Helsing, and the love of my life, Willem Dafoe, as Count Dracula. I want you to think about that. I want you to ponder that. Take it home with you.
Take it home with you. Speaking of taking it home, Coco, if we stay up any later, my mom will yell at me.
That's so true. I personally am not tired because I already slept. But
Yeah, don't worry. Like, we have set aside a coffin for you.
oh, lovely.
I have some sheets hanging from the ceiling if you want to sleep upside down. But I'll be sleeping in the bed fort tonight.
Perfect. And do you want to just like, don't put anything over your neck, keep your pillows, blankets low.
Oh, any particular reason?
It's bad for your health.
Okay, well, let's go get ready for bed. I want to see your skincare routine because I've known you for 30 years and you've looked the same every single day. But for everybody else, we'll see you later for next weekend's sleepover. And have a good night. Good night.